Hello, this is Gary from Audiobook Masteries, and welcome to the audio edition of Order Out of Struggle, How to Turn Challenges into Creative Power, written by Simo Benn. This audiobook is your guide to turning chaos and adversity into meaningful growth, no matter where you find yourself on your personal journey. We'll explore powerful strategies for shifting your mindset, building inner discipline, and mastering the art of transformation. Whether you're facing a difficult season or seeking to elevate your potential, this book is here to help you rise. Let's begin together. Your path to creative power starts now. Order out of struggle. How to turn challenges into creative power. Simo Benn. Dedication. To those who refuse to be defined by their suffering. To those who rise each time life tries to break them. To those who confront their chaos, wrestle with their fears, and carve meaning from the sharp edges of adversity. To those who understand, perhaps silently, perhaps painfully, that struggle is not a sentence but an initiation. This book is for the men and women who choose to build order from the very forces that once threatened to destroy them. It is for the ones who carry the burden, who step forward when they could retreat, and who decide that the world will not shape them, they will shape themselves. May this work strengthen your resolve and remind you that struggle is not the end of your story, but the beginning of your becoming. Acknowledgements. No book is born from the mind of one person alone, it emerges from the countless forces, seen and unseen, that shape a human being over years of struggle, discovery, and transformation. I owe profound gratitude to the individuals whose lives demonstrated the power of responsibility, discipline, and courage long before the words in this book took form. Their example showed me that strength is possible even when chaos is overwhelming, that meaning is possible even when suffering is heavy, and that order can be carved out of life's darkest moments when one refuses to fall into despair. I am equally grateful to the readers who will take these ideas and apply them to their own lives. You are the true co-authors of this book, because transformation only becomes real through action. Your willingness to confront your inner chaos, to rise beyond your past, and to create order out of your struggle is what gives this work purpose. If even a single person becomes stronger because of these pages, then the effort was worth it. About the author. Simo Benn is a writer, thinker, and builder of disciplined mindsets. His work explores the tension between chaos and order, and the profound transformation that occurs when individuals confront their struggles rather than flee from them. Driven by a belief that human beings are far more capable than they realize, he writes for those who feel called to rise, to take responsibility for their lives, to face their fears, and to turn hardship into creative power. Drawing from psychology, philosophy, and lived experience, Simo's writing aims to awaken strength in the reader, not through shallow motivation but through truth, structure, and deep introspection. He speaks to the parts of people that know they are meant for more. His mission is simple: to help individuals build themselves into someone they can respect, someone disciplined, courageous, and worthy of the life they are trying to create. About the book. Order Out of Struggle, How to Turn Challenges into Creative Power is a guide for transforming the chaos of your life into a foundation of strength, meaning, and disciplined action. Instead of teaching avoidance or false positivity, this book confronts suffering head-on and reveals how it can become the catalyst for your deepest growth. Through psychological insight, philosophical depth, and practical structure, it shows you how to build order from the very forces that once threatened to overwhelm you. This is not a book about escaping struggle, it is a book about mastering it. It teaches you how to step into responsibility, build inner order, construct a disciplined identity, and transform adversity into the fuel for your becoming. If you are ready to stop waiting for life to get easier and start becoming someone stronger, clearer, and more powerful, this book will show you how. Introduction. Order Out of Struggle, How to Turn Challenges into Creative Power. Struggle is the price of being alive. To exist is to encounter resistance, uncertainty, chaos, and suffering. Human beings often imagine that a good life is one free from these conditions, a life where obstacles vanish and comfort prevails. But this idea has never produced anything but weakness, confusion, and despair. The truth, far older and far deeper than any modern illusion, is that struggle is the very substance from which strength is born. Without resistance, nothing grows. Without chaos, nothing evolves. Without hardship, nothing becomes real. Every meaningful transformation in the human story has been forged in the tension between what we are and what we must become. The individual who refuses struggle refuses growth, and the one who embraces struggle with clarity and responsibility discovers that order, inner and outer, emerges as a direct consequence. Struggle is not the enemy. It is the raw material from which a powerful self is sculpted. When life confronts you with difficulty, it is not punishing you. It is presenting you with the essential conditions for creation. Creative power does not appear in moments of comfort, it awakens in moments of disruption. When something breaks, you are forced to reorganize. When something collapses, you are compelled to rebuild. When something threatens you, you must summon abilities you did not know you possessed. This process is not convenient. It is not gentle. It is not painless. But it is miraculous in its potential. The very experiences that feel unbearable in the moment often become the experiences that give rise to inner order, psychological strength, and a sense of meaning deep enough to sustain you through the storms of existence. Challenge forces you to evolve. Struggle forces you to grow. It is the pressure that shapes you into someone capable of building order where previously there was only fragmentation and fear. Modern life has trained people to avoid struggle, to numb pain, to seek comfort at all costs, and to interpret difficulty as evidence that something is wrong. But this mindset leaves individuals brittle and unprepared for the weight of reality. You cannot thrive in a world that you are unwilling to confront. You cannot build a meaningful life if you are allergic to discomfort. And you cannot discover your potential if you refuse to be tested. A life without struggle is not a life of peace, it is a life of stagnation, and stagnation gradually becomes suffering of a deeper, more corrosive kind. The chaos you refuse to face does not disappear, it grows in the shadows until it overwhelms you. When you run from struggle, you surrender the very tools that could have transformed you. Order, by contrast, is not something bestowed upon you. It is something you create. It emerges from the disciplined confrontation with chaos, the voluntary, courageous decision to face what is difficult rather than flee from it. Order is the structure you build around your life, the habits you cultivate, the standards you uphold, the responsibilities you embrace, the goals you pursue. It is the psychological stability that forms when your actions align with your purpose. It is the emotional clarity that arises when you stop deceiving yourself. And it is the spiritual strength that grows when you step willingly into the unknown. Order is not the absence of chaos, it is mastery over it. It is your creative response to the struggles that shape you. To turn struggle into creative power is to adopt a new orientation toward life. Instead of seeing obstacles as interruptions, you begin to see them as invitations. Instead of perceiving difficulty as a threat, you interpret it as a signal of where you must grow. Instead of collapsing into victimhood, you rise into authorship. You become someone who does not merely react to circumstances but shapes them. Someone who understands that life will present chaos endlessly, and that your task, your responsibility, your purpose, is to bring order out of that chaos through disciplined action and courageous engagement. This shift does not remove struggle, but it transforms your relationship with it. You stop fighting reality and start collaborating with it. This book is a roadmap for that transformation. It does not promise ease, because ease produces nothing of value. It does not promise shortcuts, because shortcuts undermine the very structure of character. Instead, it offers a path, a difficult, demanding, meaningful path, for turning your challenges into fuel. You will learn how to extract strength from suffering, clarity from confusion, competence from failure, and order from chaos. You will learn how to confront the inner enemy, how to discipline the mind, how to integrate vision with action, and how to create a life rooted in responsibility and meaning. You will learn not only how to endure struggle, but how to use it as the catalyst for becoming someone extraordinary. If you take this journey seriously, if you commit to the truth that struggle is not a curse but a call, you will begin to sense a profound shift taking place. You will no longer be crushed by hardship because you will understand its purpose. You will no longer fear uncertainty because you will trust your ability to navigate it. You will no longer be trapped in chaos because you will know. When purpose enters consciousness, confusion begins to lose its grip. The scattered energy of the psyche starts to consolidate around direction. Your thinking becomes less about avoidance and more about progress. You stop asking, "How do I escape this pain?" and begin to ask, "What must I build from it?" That shift changes the entire chemical and emotional composition of the self. The same situation that once generated despair now generates resolve. The difference is orientation. You have turned your mind from retreat to advance. Purpose transforms suffering from something meaningless into something instructive. The pain does not vanish, but it acquires context, and context transforms endurance into strength. To rewire your thought patterns through purpose, you must begin with honesty. You must identify what truly matters, not what you wish mattered. Many people confuse purpose with ambition. Ambition seeks power, approval, or validation. Purpose seeks meaning. The difference is that ambition ends when its desires are met, while purpose grows deeper with every challenge. When you align your mind with genuine purpose, the trivial loses its authority. Petty concerns, gossip, and fear lose their grip because they no longer fit within the mental structure you are building. Thought becomes cleaner, sharper, and more stable. This clarity does not come from suppression, it comes from alignment. Purpose functions as a filter for thought. Without it, every idea seems equally important, and the mind drowns in options. With it, your thoughts begin to form a hierarchy. The higher your purpose, the more it organizes the rest of your mental life. A person who knows what they are working toward does not waste energy on distractions. They think deliberately, because their thoughts now serve something larger than their impulses. This is why people with purpose appear calm even in crisis. They are not reacting at random but acting according to structure. The mind governed by purpose becomes like a well-tuned instrument, powerful, precise, and harmonious. Purpose also integrates emotion with logic. The problem-focused mind is often torn between the two. Emotion demands comfort while logic demands truth. Purpose reconciles them by giving both a common direction. Emotion becomes the energy that fuels commitment, logic becomes the compass that maintains it. This integration creates psychological coherence. The fragmented mind becomes unified. You no longer waste energy fighting yourself because your thoughts, feelings, and actions are working toward the same goal. This is why purpose restores stability. It aligns the internal forces that once competed for dominance and directs them toward creation instead of conflict. Rewiring thought patterns through purpose also requires repetition. The mind changes not through occasional insight but through consistent practice. Every time you redirect a thought toward your goal, you strengthen the neural pathways of clarity and weaken those of confusion. Over time, this creates a permanent shift in perception. You start to think in solutions rather than problems, in effort rather than excuses. What once felt forced becomes automatic. The brain, like the body, adapts to what it practices. When you practice purpose, you cultivate mental strength. Each purposeful thought is a repetition that trains your consciousness toward order. There is a moral beauty in this process. To pursue purpose is to declare that your life matters enough to structure. It is a rejection of nihilism, the belief that nothing has meaning. Every time you bring your thoughts into alignment with purpose, you participate in the creation of meaning itself. You are saying, in essence, that existence is not arbitrary, that your actions can bring order to the world. This belief is not naive, it is necessary. Without it, the human mind collapses into chaos and despair. Purpose gives suffering dignity because it transforms endurance into contribution. You are no longer merely surviving, you are building. Purpose also sharpens perception. When you know what you aim for, you begin to notice opportunities that were invisible before. The world itself seems to reorganize around your intention. This is not magic, it is focus. Your mind is now attuned to what serves your aim. The same world that once seemed filled with random noise becomes filled with meaningful signals. You notice the right people, the right ideas, the right timing. Clarity is not a gift, it is a consequence of alignment. When your inner world is ordered by purpose, the external world begins to reveal its structure in return. This process, however, demands sacrifice. To rewire your thought patterns, you must let go of mental habits that no longer serve you. You must abandon the comfort of familiar complaints and release the identity that clings to suffering. Many resist this because they do not know who they are without their pain. But purpose gives you something greater to identify with. It invites you to replace the story of your wounds with the story of your becoming. To pursue purpose is to agree to the death of your former self, the one who reacted, the one who avoided, the one who lived in confusion. That death is painful but necessary. It is how rebirth begins. When purpose becomes central, discipline follows naturally. You no longer need to force yourself into order because your aim demands it. A person who is building something meaningful does not require constant motivation, they require clarity. Every morning, their goal calls them forward. The mind that once wandered now marches. The scattered energy that once fueled anxiety becomes determination. This is the transformation of the soul from chaos to coherence. Purpose does not remove difficulty, but it transforms its meaning. You begin to see challenges not as interruptions but as integral parts of the path. Every obstacle becomes a teacher, every failure a refinement. The ultimate function of purpose is to transform thought from reactive to creative. You stop merely interpreting reality and begin shaping it. Your ideas evolve from commentary into construction. You no longer ask, "What is wrong with the world?" but rather, "What can I build within it?" That question alone rewires the mind at its deepest level. It replaces despair with initiative. It replaces helplessness with authorship. Purpose is not simply a direction, it is a design. It gives the mind something to serve that is greater than itself, and in that service, it becomes ordered, disciplined, and whole. To rewire thought patterns through purpose is to take full responsibility for your consciousness. It is to stop waiting for clarity to arrive from the outside and to begin constructing it from within. Each thought you align with purpose is a brick in the foundation of a stable mind. Over time, that foundation becomes unshakable. The storms of life still come, but they no longer scatter you, because you know what you are building and why. Purpose is the scaffolding that allows the mind to rise above chaos. It does not remove struggle, it redeems it. In its light, every challenge becomes material for creation, and every day becomes another chance to build order out of struggle. Building the first internal structure of a solution maker. Every transformation begins internally long before it is seen externally. The mind must be built into a structure capable of stability, focus, and purpose before life can reflect those qualities. This is what it means to become a solution maker. It is not merely about solving problems, it is about becoming the kind of person through whom solutions naturally emerge. A solution maker is not someone who avoids struggle but someone who organizes it. They have developed an inner system, a disciplined architecture of thought, emotion, and action that transforms disorder into progress. The construction of that system is the foundation of all strength. The first pillar of this internal structure is responsibility. You must decide, once and for all, that no one else is coming to save you. The moment you accept that your life is entirely in your hands, you begin to think differently. Responsibility sharpens perception because it forces you to see what must be done instead of what could be blamed. It removes the luxury of victimhood. This is not cruelty, it is freedom. When you take ownership of your circumstances, even when they are unjust, you reclaim your power to act. The solution maker's mind begins here, with the unwavering commitment to face reality as it is and build order from within it. The second pillar is clarity. A mind filled with vague desires and half-formed intentions cannot produce meaningful solutions. You must define what you are aiming at with precision. Clarity is not about perfection, it is about direction. When you articulate your aims clearly, what you value, what you seek, what you will no longer tolerate, your entire psyche begins to align around those principles. Thought becomes organized. Emotion becomes focused. Action becomes efficient. The person who knows exactly what they are building wastes little time on doubt. Clarity, like light, reveals both the path and the obstacles. It does not remove difficulty, but it makes it visible, and what is visible can be mastered. Discipline is the third pillar. To train the mind to seek order is also to accept that chaos is not an anomaly, it is the default state of being. Life is uncertain, unpredictable, and often cruel. The mind that expects comfort will collapse at the first sign of disorder. The mind that expects chaos, and has prepared to find structure within it, becomes resilient. This is the essence of psychological maturity, the ability to remain oriented even when the world loses its form. The individual who can hold their ground amid confusion is one who has learned to see difficulty as the natural terrain of existence. In such a person, fear is replaced by vigilance, and helplessness by composure. Difficulty, properly understood, is not a punishment but a call to evolve. When the mind encounters chaos, it receives an invitation to grow in capacity, to refine perception, to deepen understanding. The solution-oriented individual accepts this invitation willingly. They recognize that order is not given, it must be extracted. The process is painful because it requires confronting the limits of one's competence. Yet, it is through this confrontation that the self expands. The mind becomes organized by engaging with what challenges it, not by avoiding it. Avoidance breeds disorder because it leaves potential unintegrated. Engagement creates structure because it transforms potential into mastery. Thus, every problem faced consciously becomes a step toward greater internal coherence. The untrained mind, when confronted with difficulty, clings to emotion as its guide. Emotion is powerful but blind, it reacts to threat, not to truth. It floods the system with urgency but offers no direction. The disciplined mind learns to treat emotion as signal rather than command. It listens without obeying. In doing so, it reclaims sovereignty over the inner world. This separation between emotion and action marks the beginning of wisdom. It allows thought to regain its proper place as the organizer of experience. A person who can think clearly while feeling deeply becomes capable of bearing the weight of reality without breaking beneath it. Training the mind also requires moral courage. It is not easy to think clearly when clarity reveals your own inadequacy. To examine your difficulties honestly is to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself, your weaknesses, your failures, your misplaced blame. Many avoid this confrontation by externalizing responsibility. They prefer resentment to self-examination because resentment preserves pride. But resentment is the enemy of transformation. It feeds on mental disorder, thriving wherever truth is denied. The courageous mind, by contrast, seeks order through truth, however painful. It would rather be wounded by reality than comforted by delusion. This commitment to truth is what stabilizes thought and aligns it with being. The disciplined mind learns that meaning emerges from attention. What you attend to grows in significance, while what you ignore decays. In chaos, attention becomes the tool of creation. If you focus solely on despair, despair expands. If you focus on the possibility of structure, structure begins to form. This is not magical thinking, it is the psychological law of perception. The world you inhabit is, to a large extent, shaped by what your mind chooses to emphasize. To seek order is to guide that emphasis toward what builds rather than what breaks. The mind becomes the craftsman of reality, shaping experience through disciplined perception. A solution-oriented mind is not one that denies difficulty but one that transcends it through interpretation. Every situation contains both tragedy and opportunity, and which you perceive depends on the lens you choose. The untrained mind sees only the pain, the trained mind perceives the potential concealed within it. This shift is not naive optimism, it is moral responsibility. It is the decision to treat adversity as material for growth rather than as evidence of injustice. Such a mindset dignifies suffering because it gives it purpose. It allows you to endure without resentment, to struggle without despair, and to move through darkness with direction. There is a deep moral truth embedded in the discipline of thought. To think clearly in difficulty is an act of service. When you organize your mind, you contribute to the order of the world. Chaos multiplies when individuals refuse to confront it within themselves. Clarity radiates outward in the same way disorder does. A stable mind stabilizes its surroundings. The person who learns to think properly under pressure becomes a beacon of composure in a confused culture. Their calm is contagious, their presence corrective. They embody the possibility that order can emerge from any storm if the individual is willing to take responsibility for their own cognition. The process of training the mind to seek order also refines character. Thought and morality are inseparable. How you think determines how you act. A disordered mind produces disordered behavior. The disciplined thinker, by contrast, acts with precision and integrity because they perceive reality accurately. They do not waste energy on what cannot be changed, nor do they corrupt their perception with bitterness. Their actions arise from clarity, and clarity itself becomes a moral virtue. To think rightly is to live rightly. The mind that seeks order naturally produces conduct that sustains it. This is why responsibility for thought is the foundation of all ethical action. In time, the trained mind comes to see difficulty not as an interruption to life, but as the very medium through which life reveals its structure. Every challenge faced consciously becomes a rehearsal for mastery. Each obstacle, when engaged with clarity, teaches the mind how to reorder itself more effectively. This process, repeated across years, produces wisdom, the ability to discern the pattern that underlies apparent chaos. Wisdom is not mere knowledge, it is the capacity to see through difficulty into order. It is the fruit of disciplined attention and moral engagement with reality. To train the mind to seek order in difficulty, therefore, is to participate in the ancient struggle between chaos and creation. Each moment of clear thought is a victory in that battle. Each decision to focus on what can be built rather than on what has been lost strengthens the structure of both the self and the world. The mind that learns to extract meaning from hardship becomes indestructible, because it no longer depends on circumstance for stability. It carries order within it, radiating coherence wherever it goes. Such a mind does not merely survive difficulty, it transforms it, turning struggle into understanding and suffering into strength. This is the moral and psychological triumph of the solution-oriented mindset. It proves that the human being, when trained to think clearly, is capable of transforming even chaos itself into order. Building psychological stability through focus. The human mind is not naturally still. It moves restlessly, chasing every fragment of thought, emotion, and stimulation that crosses its path. This restlessness is the default condition of an undisciplined consciousness, a state of internal scattering that weakens both perception and will. Stability does not emerge by accident, it is built through deliberate attention. Focus is the instrument through which order is restored to the mind's chaos. To focus is to choose, and through choice, to structure experience. The person who learns to direct attention toward what matters begins to assemble the fragments of their psyche into coherence. This process is not mechanical, it is moral. Focus is the act of deciding what deserves care and what does not, and in that decision, the mind reveals its values. The stability born of focus is not a fragile calm dependent on external ease. It is an inner strength that persists even when the world trembles. To build psychological stability, one must learn to hold attention steady amid distraction, uncertainty, and fear. The modern world conspires against this capacity. Every device, every demand, every competing voice fractures concentration and scatters the mind's energy across trivialities. Yet, the person who cannot focus becomes a slave to circumstance, forever pulled by external forces. Focus is liberation from that slavery. It grants the ability to choose where to place the light of consciousness, and therefore, how to experience reality itself. The focused mind is not at the mercy of chaos, it stands as the architect of meaning within it. Attention is the gatekeeper of perception. Whatever the mind attends to expands in significance, while whatever it neglects fades into irrelevance. In this sense, focus is not simply a tool but a creative force. To direct attention toward what is meaningful is to participate in the construction of order. This is why psychological stability begins with focus. The mind cannot be stable if its awareness is scattered. Every shift of attention is a shift in the structure of experience. The undisciplined mind allows itself to be pulled by impulse, the disciplined mind directs its own gaze with intention. This deliberate act transforms confusion into clarity, and clarity, sustained over time, becomes composure. To focus properly requires moral hierarchy. The mind cannot direct itself effectively unless it knows what is of highest value. Focus without value is mere fixation. The strength of long-term direction lies in its refusal to yield to despair even when progress appears invisible. The individual who lives by this principle understands that greatness is rarely seen while it is being built. The moral test of faith is not whether you believe when results are visible, but whether you act rightly when they are not. To hold to your vision through uncertainty is to embody courage of the highest order. You learn that meaning does not depend on circumstance, it depends on commitment. This steadfastness creates a kind of moral gravity. It draws your fragmented emotions and distracted impulses into alignment with the enduring purpose you have chosen. Direction also refines perception. The person without aim sees only obstacles, the one with a vision sees challenges as instruments of development. When you possess long-term orientation, you stop interpreting difficulty as evidence of failure and begin to view it as feedback from reality. Every setback becomes information that sharpens your competence. This shift in perception eliminates the bitterness that so often poisons ambition. You cease to envy others or curse fate because you understand that struggle is part of the path. You begin to perceive justice in the structure of reality, not because life is fair, but because it rewards those who remain steadfast through its trials. To live with long-term direction is to practice faith, not blind faith in circumstance, but faith in meaning itself. It is the conviction that disciplined effort, guided by truth, will produce order even when you cannot see it yet. This faith is not naive optimism, it is earned confidence. It is the strength that arises from integrity maintained through hardship. The person who lives this way develops a quiet authority. Their words carry weight because they are rooted in continuity. They do not chase inspiration, they embody it. They become living evidence that morality, properly understood, is not constraint but liberation, the freedom that comes from coherence between aim, action, and being. In the final analysis, long-term direction is the antidote to the chaos of modern existence. It rescues the soul from the tyranny of immediacy and restores the hierarchy of value that gives life meaning. The moral power of such direction lies in its capacity to unify the person across time, to make the child, the adult, and the elder aspects of the same story rather than strangers inhabiting the same body. When you live in accordance with a vision that transcends the moment, you participate in the eternal. You bring order out of chaos not only in your own life but in the world that reflects it. Long-term direction is therefore not a strategy, it is a sacred responsibility, the continual act of aligning yourself with what is highest, no matter the cost. Vision as the architecture of personal order. Vision is not a dream to be admired from afar, it is the skeletal framework upon which a meaningful life is constructed. It gives form to chaos and purpose to effort. Without vision, human beings remain unassembled, scattered fragments of potential waiting to cohere around something greater than impulse or circumstance. To possess vision is to possess an inner structure that governs thought, emotion, and behavior with direction and hierarchy. It is the architecture of personal order, the invisible design that organizes existence into coherence. Every stable individual, every disciplined life, every enduring accomplishment rests upon this unseen framework of vision that holds all the parts of being in proper alignment. The architecture of vision is not built overnight, it is shaped through continual confrontation with both the external world and the internal disorder that resists it. The mind, left to its own devices, gravitates toward entropy. It disperses energy across endless distractions, drawn to whatever promises ease or stimulation. Vision arrests that drift. It imposes a pattern, a hierarchy, a boundary. It tells the psyche where to direct its strength and how to interpret its suffering. Just as a building collapses without structure, a life collapses without aim. Vision acts as the scaffolding that allows your potential to take form, transforming chaos into something inhabitable. In this sense, vision is not imagination, it is construction. The moral depth of vision lies in its demand for integration. When you hold a true vision, it calls every aspect of your being into order. The intellect must serve it with clarity, emotion must fuel it with passion, discipline must protect it with consistency. There is no part of you that remains untouched. Vision unites the fragmented self by giving every faculty a shared purpose. The laziness that once governed your body becomes transformed into strength through daily effort. The doubt that once paralyzed your mind becomes humility that refines your aim. The fear that once constricted your heart becomes vigilance that keeps your path straight. Vision redeems the divided psyche by turning chaos into coordinated movement toward meaning. Vision also acts as a moral filter through which every choice is evaluated. Once you define what you are building, everything that contradicts it becomes instantly recognizable as disorder. The alignment this creates is liberating rather than restrictive. It clarifies what to pursue and what to reject, what to tolerate and what to remove. A person without vision hesitates at every crossroad, crippled by indecision because they lack the criteria by which to judge. But the person with a well-structured vision walks with quiet certainty. They are not free from fear or doubt, but their aim illuminates the path through them. Moral clarity, then, is not the absence of temptation but the presence of orientation. The architecture of vision must be anchored in truth, or it will not stand when tested by reality. False visions, those built upon pride, resentment, or vanity, may rise quickly but collapse under pressure because they rest upon illusions. A vision rooted in truth, however, gains strength from adversity. Each challenge exposes its weaknesses, forcing refinement and depth. In this way, struggle becomes the architect's assistant, helping to solidify what was once abstract. Every failure that does not destroy you contributes to the foundation of stability. You become less naive, more precise, more grounded in what endures. A truthful vision does not crumble in the storm, it transforms the storm into part of its design. To make vision the architecture of personal order, you must embody it in daily structure. Order cannot remain an idea, it must inhabit time, behavior, and space. Your routines, environment, and relationships must all reflect the future you are building. When you rise at a consistent hour, you are not merely managing time, you are asserting dominion over chaos. When you keep your space clean, you are reinforcing the internal discipline that sustains clarity. When you choose relationships that demand honesty and excellence, you are surrounding your vision with reinforcement rather than decay. Vision becomes real when it informs the smallest decisions, when the ordinary moments of life begin to echo its greater purpose. Vision also defines identity. You become the person required to fulfill your aim. The individual you are today is a temporary scaffolding, useful for construction but destined to evolve. Every act of alignment between vision and action reshapes the self, chiseling away what is false and strengthening what is essential. Identity, therefore, is not discovered but built. You are not merely finding who you are becoming who the vision demands you to be. The higher the vision, the more radical the transformation. It asks that you abandon mediocrity, renounce self-deception, and carry burdens equal to the greatness you seek. Through this process, the self becomes both the builder and the building, an evolving structure of integrity rising out of struggle. To live according to vision is to accept the tension between what is and what could be. This tension is painful, for it exposes the distance between your current self and your potential. But it is also sacred, because it is the space where transformation occurs. The person who avoids this tension chooses comfort over growth and remains confined within the walls of habit. The one who endures it willingly participates in the continual creation of order out of chaos. Vision keeps this tension alive, it prevents stagnation by reminding you that you are always in process. Perfection is not the goal, progress toward alignment is. Each day spent closer to your vision is a victory of order over disorder, of spirit over inertia. Vision, when fully integrated, becomes indistinguishable from character. It ceases to be something you think about and becomes something you are. Your words, actions, and even your silence begin to reflect the architecture of your aim. This is what it means to live with integrity, to have every element of your being organized around a coherent moral and spiritual structure. Such people radiate stability because their existence is no longer fragmented. They stand as fixed points in a chaotic world, and others instinctively orient themselves toward their presence. The power they wield is not dominance but coherence. They are living embodiments of order, and their lives remind others that structure is not limitation but liberation. There is a profound humility required in maintaining vision as the architecture of personal order. The higher the vision, the greater the responsibility, and the more dangerous the temptation to arrogance. When you begin to build something meaningful, the ego seeks to claim ownership of it. This process demands an ongoing conversation with your conscience. Conscience is the voice of principle within you, the subtle whisper that warns when you are veering from what is true. Many drown it out with noise, busyness, entertainment, justification, because to listen is to risk judgment. But silence is the space in which conscience speaks most clearly. The ability to listen to that voice, and to act upon it, is a mark of moral adulthood. It means you have chosen to align yourself not with convenience or popularity but with the eternal. Every time you obey conscience, you strengthen its clarity. Every time you ignore it, the voice fades a little more, until one day, it is almost gone, and with it goes your sense of direction. The temptation to compromise principle always disguises itself as practicality. The mind whispers that a small deception is harmless, that bending the truth will avoid unnecessary pain, that doing what is right can wait until conditions improve. But every compromise corrupts the soul just enough to make the next one easier. Moral decay rarely arrives with a roar, it creeps quietly through justified exceptions. Integrity is lost one rationalization at a time. To resist this process requires vigilance, a commitment to live as though every small act matters, because it does. The structure of your life is built from moments that seem trivial at the time but reveal their significance when the pressure comes. When your actions finally align with your highest principles, you experience a kind of stillness that cannot be faked. The war between what you believe and what you do comes to an end. That stillness is not passivity, it is the peace that follows moral clarity. You know where you stand because your behavior testifies to it. The world, unpredictable as it remains, becomes less threatening because you are no longer divided. You cannot control what happens around you, but you can control the alignment of your own soul. That alignment is the only true security a person can possess, because no external force can take it from you without your consent. Principled action also connects you to something transcendent. When you act in accordance with truth, you are cooperating with the moral structure of existence itself. This cooperation imbues your life with significance beyond the personal. You become a participant in the eternal dialogue between chaos and order, light and darkness, being and decay. Every act of integrity, no matter how small, contributes to the maintenance of that order. It is as if reality itself takes note of the individual who stands upright amid the storm. Such a person becomes a beacon for others, not through preaching, but through example. The moral life radiates, it silently calls others toward what is good, reminding them that greatness begins in fidelity to principle. The alignment of action and principle is not an achievement you complete, it is a discipline you maintain. You will fail, often. You will fall short of your own ideals, sometimes painfully so. But even failure, when faced honestly, can deepen integrity. To recognize your deviation from principle is to be reminded of your humanity and your responsibility to rise again. Guilt, when interpreted correctly, is not condemnation, it is guidance. It signals the distance between who you are and who you could be. The refusal to feel guilt is not strength, it is blindness. The strength lies in acknowledging your weakness and recommitting to the path of moral coherence, even after collapse. The path of alignment is narrow because it demands continual vigilance. It is easy to speak of virtue when the world applauds you for it, but real virtue is practiced in obscurity, when no one is watching, when temptation whispers that no one will know. The unseen choice determines the true quality of the soul. You become who you are in the moments where compliance would be easier than conviction. It is there, in the silence of conscience, that you decide whether you are building a life of truth or a life of convenience. Every private victory of principle becomes public in time, because integrity leaves traces in everything it touches. To align action with principle is ultimately to participate in the creation of order, not only within yourself but in the world. The person who lives by truth becomes an axis around which stability forms. Their presence steadies others because it reflects the moral structure of reality itself. Society begins and ends with the moral integrity of its individuals. When people abandon principle for expedience, civilizations decay. But when individuals uphold principle even in darkness, they sustain the light that allows others to find their way. The alignment of one person with truth is therefore never a private act, it is a contribution to the moral balance of the world. The reward of this alignment is profound but costly. It demands discipline, humility, and the willingness to suffer for what is right. Yet the alternative, living in contradiction, is far worse. A life built on compromise is a slow form of self-destruction, a quiet corrosion of the soul. The person who acts against what they know to be true can never find peace because they have divided themselves against reality. To live in truth, however difficult, is to live whole. It is to discover that moral order is not a burden but a blessing, that the path of principle is not a prison but the only road to freedom. In the end, aligning your actions with your highest principles is not about perfection but orientation. It is about facing the world with honesty, even when honesty costs you comfort, and doing what must be done, even when you would rather look away. The alignment of principle and action is the quiet miracle of moral life, the moment when word and deed, thought and reality, come together in harmony. To live in that harmony is to live meaningfully. It is to discover that truth is not an idea to be admired but a path to be walked, and that the human soul finds its highest peace only when it walks that path with integrity. Courage, voluntarily stepping into chaos. Courage is the act of aligning yourself with what is true despite the presence of fear. It is not the absence of fear but the decision to face it willingly, to look directly at the unknown and declare that you will move forward anyway. Fear is an inevitable companion of existence because life itself is uncertain. To live is to walk continually into territory that has not yet been mapped. Courage, therefore, is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is the force that allows you to transform potential into reality. Without it, knowledge decays into paralysis, and potential withers into regret. Every great transformation, every meaningful act, begins with the decision to step voluntarily into chaos rather than waiting to be forced into it. Chaos is not evil in itself, it is the raw material of creation. It is the unformed possibility from which order must be drawn. But to approach chaos without courage is to be consumed by it. The fearful mind sees chaos and retreats, seeking safety in the familiar, even when that familiarity has become a prison. The courageous mind steps forward, knowing that the only way to bring meaning into existence is to engage directly with what is unpredictable and painful. In this sense, courage is the bridge between what you are and what you could be. It transforms suffering into strength, confusion into clarity, and fear into growth. The person who refuses this confrontation remains trapped in perpetual adolescence, protected, perhaps, but never mature. Voluntary confrontation with chaos requires a moral decision. It demands that you stop blaming life for its difficulty and instead accept that your task is to face that difficulty consciously. This act of acceptance is not resignation, it is the foundation of power. You cannot transform what you will not confront. The person who denies the chaos of their own existence, who refuses to see their fears, their flaws, their weaknesses, condemns themselves to remain ruled by them. But the one who turns toward that darkness willingly discovers that courage is not a momentary impulse but a way of being. It becomes the quiet discipline of saying yes to reality, even when reality hurts. Fear has a deceptive logic. It convinces you that avoidance will keep you safe, that retreat will preserve your peace. Yet every act of avoidance expands the territory of fear. What you refuse to face grows larger in the shadows. The mind knows, even if you pretend otherwise, that you are shrinking from something vital. This self-deception corrodes confidence. You begin to distrust yourself because you know that your comfort has been purchased through cowardice. Each time you hide from what you fear, you pay for temporary relief with long-term instability. Courage reverses that pattern. It trades momentary pain for enduring strength. It demands payment up front, but what it gives in return is far more valuable. The knowledge that you are capable of standing firm in the face of life's storms. The moral weight of courage lies in its voluntary nature. To be forced into hardship is tragic, but to choose hardship for the sake of what is right is noble. That choice defines the essence of moral character. When you step into chaos willingly, you transform suffering into meaning because you have accepted the responsibility for it. You are no longer the passive victim of circumstance but the active participant in creation. You become a co-author of your destiny, shaping yourself through confrontation. The voluntary nature of courage elevates it from mere endurance to virtue. Ultimately, excellence as a daily way of being is the culmination of mastery's moral journey. It is the point where discipline becomes natural, where struggle transforms into grace, where the pursuit of improvement becomes indistinguishable from the act of living itself. Excellence integrates effort and being until they are one. It is no longer something you do, it is what you are. The truly excellent person does not chase greatness, they embody it quietly through the constancy of their conduct. Their life becomes a testament to the principle that meaning is not found in grand moments but in the faithful repetition of what is right. Through their example, they show that excellence is not about superiority but about integrity, the alignment of the human spirit with the highest truth it can perceive. In the end, excellence is love made visible. It is love for truth, for order, for the divine potential hidden within imperfection. To live excellently is to serve that love through action, to build every day upon the foundation of care, courage, and devotion. It is to understand that every gesture, every thought, every word contributes to the architecture of the soul. When you live this way, you discover that excellence is not the pursuit of flawlessness but the practice of fidelity, to the good, the beautiful, and the true. And through that fidelity, you participate in the creation of meaning itself, transforming both yourself and the world around you into something worthy of reverence. The furnace of transformation. Confronting the inner enemy. There comes a moment in every person's life when the true battlefield reveals itself. It is not out there, among the shifting conditions of the world, nor in the obstacles that others place in our path. The real confrontation is inward. The enemy that must be faced is not the chaos of circumstance but the chaos of the self. This truth is uncomfortable because it strips away the comforting illusion that our suffering is caused entirely by forces beyond our control. It demands the courage to admit that the most dangerous adversary lies within our own consciousness, the part of us that lies, evades, and rationalizes weakness as virtue. Until that recognition dawns, no transformation is possible. The inner enemy wears many faces, each adapted to our particular vulnerabilities. Sometimes it is fear, whispering that the risk is too great or that failure would be unbearable. Sometimes it is pride, convincing us that we already know enough and have nothing left to learn. More often it is self-deception, the subtle twisting of perception that allows us to remain comfortable while our integrity quietly decays. The mind, astonishing in its complexity, is also astonishing in its capacity for betrayal. It conspires against its own potential, preferring the familiarity of suffering to the uncertainty of growth. And when that betrayal becomes habitual, the person begins to live in bad faith, pretending to seek truth while secretly avoiding it. To confront the inner enemy is to declare war on the part of yourself that prefers illusion over responsibility. This act is not gentle. It is psychological violence directed toward your own falsehoods. You must expose the excuses that have disguised laziness as caution and cowardice as humility. The process is painful because those excuses have become part of your identity. They have protected you from the unbearable awareness of your own inadequacy. But protection bought at the cost of truth is not safety, it is corruption. Every time you lie to yourself, you trade a fragment of your soul for temporary relief. The sum of those fragments, collected over years of avoidance, becomes the weight of your despair. Human beings have a remarkable ability to see the flaws of others while remaining blind to their own. This blindness is not accidental. It is the psyche's defense against the horror of self-recognition. It is far easier to project the darkness outward, to locate evil in society, politics, or other people, than to admit that the same corruption exists within. But projection does not eliminate darkness, it multiplies it. The chaos you refuse to face internally will express itself externally in distorted forms, resentment, arrogance, blame. The world becomes a mirror reflecting your unexamined faults. The only way to clean that mirror is to begin the work within, to take back the responsibility you have unconsciously scattered across the landscape of your complaints. This confrontation cannot be achieved through mere analysis. Intellect alone is insufficient because the inner enemy is not rational, it is emotional, instinctual, and deeply rooted in the unconscious. It lives in the patterns you repeat despite your better judgment, in the habits that feel safe because they are familiar. The act of confrontation, therefore, requires honesty deeper than thought, the kind of honesty that reaches into feeling and action. You must look not only at what you think but at what you do, at what your behavior reveals about your true priorities. The measure of truth in a person is not in their ideals but in their actions. To see the gap between those two without excuse is the beginning of moral awakening. The most dangerous form of the inner enemy is self-pity. It masquerades as sensitivity, as moral awareness, even as humility, but it is none of those things. Self-pity is the quiet voice that insists you have suffered too much to be expected to change. It demands sympathy instead of discipline, validation instead of transformation. And yet, beneath its gentle tone lies the seed of nihilism. When you indulge in self-pity, you are saying that your pain exempts you from responsibility, that the world owes you understanding rather than challenge. But the truth is harsher and higher. Your suffering does not excuse you, it calls you to rise. The moment you answer that call, the voice of self-pity begins to lose its grip. To face the inner enemy is to endure humiliation of a particular kind, the humiliation of seeing yourself clearly. There is no greater blow to the ego than the realization that much of what you suffer has been self-created. But that humiliation is sacred, because it marks the death of pretense. Only when the false self crumbles can the real one begin to emerge. The person who cannot endure the sight of their own weakness will forever project it onto others. But the one who looks directly into their imperfection without despairing discovers a strange paradox. In acknowledging their brokenness, they become whole. Truth, even when painful, reorders the soul. This work demands solitude, because solitude removes the distractions that shield us from ourselves. When you are alone, the masks fall away. The noise of the world recedes, and the voice within, that persistent, often uncomfortable whisper, becomes audible. Many people avoid solitude for this reason. They fill their lives with constant stimulation to escape the confrontation waiting in silence. But the silence is not your enemy, it is your mirror. If you can endure it long enough to hear what it has to say, you will begin to understand who you truly are and what must be destroyed within you for something better to emerge. The inner enemy thrives in distraction, it starves in awareness. The moral dimension of this struggle cannot be overstated. The refusal to confront the inner enemy is not merely psychological weakness, it is moral failure. When you remain enslaved to your own deceit, you become incapable of acting justly in the world. The lies you tell yourself eventually corrupt your relationships, your work, your society. Every private act of dishonesty contributes to public decay. Civilization itself depends on individuals willing to fight their internal wars. The person who conquers their own chaos becomes a stabilizing force in a disordered world. The one who refuses becomes a conduit through which disorder spreads. Thus, self-confrontation is not only personal therapy, it is moral duty. Yet the confrontation must be balanced with compassion. To see your darkness is not to hate yourself but to understand yourself fully. Hatred freezes growth as effectively as denial does. The purpose of truth is not to destroy you but to reorganize you. The goal is not self-condemnation but self-integration, to bring light into the hidden places of the psyche so that nothing within you remains divided against itself. When you see your flaws with both honesty and mercy, you begin to act not from self-hatred but from responsibility. The same energy that once maintained your illusions becomes fuel for your transformation. This inner battle is lifelong. The enemy within never disappears completely, it adapts, retreats, waits. Each victory must be renewed through continued vigilance. Discipline is the guard at the gate of the soul, ensuring that chaos does not reclaim the throne. The person who imagines they have conquered themselves entirely is already deceived. The process of self-confrontation is cyclical, each ascent reveals deeper layers of imperfection. But that is not cause for despair. It is evidence that growth continues. To live is to struggle with one's own potential for destruction and to bring it under voluntary order. The furnace of transformation burns endlessly because the work of becoming is never complete. At its core, confronting the inner enemy is an act of faith, faith that the truth, no matter how painful, is preferable to the comfort of delusion. It is the belief that goodness is stronger than corruption, and that within each human being lies the capacity to transcend their worst impulses. Without this faith, the confrontation becomes unbearable. However, stability does not mean rigidity. The person who confuses the two becomes brittle, incapable of adapting to change. True stability is alive, it breathes and bends without breaking. It recognizes that order must evolve if it is to remain relevant. The stabilizing individual listens as well as leads, reflects as well as acts. They do not cling to structure for its own sake, but for the sake of meaning. They know that rules are not prisons but pathways, tools for aligning human behavior with truth. When circumstances shift, they adjust their approach without compromising their principles. Their flexibility is guided by discernment, not by fear of conflict. This dynamic stability allows them to endure while others collapse under the weight of uncertainty. The moral dimension of stability lies in service. The stabilizing person does not live only for themselves, their order exists for the good of others. Strength without service becomes arrogance, but strength used to protect and uplift becomes sacred. The world hungers for such individuals, those who bring calm to crisis, wisdom to confusion, and compassion to division. They are not saviors in the grand sense, but redeemers in the local sense. They mend what is broken in the immediate, the tangible, the close at hand. Through their ordinary actions, they sustain the extraordinary miracle of civilization. Their moral contribution may go unnoticed by history, but it is felt in the quiet continuation of everything good that still survives. To become a stabilizing force is, in the end, an act of faith. It is faith in the power of individual character to counteract collective decay. It is faith that the pursuit of truth, however small in scope, has ripple effects that extend beyond comprehension. The stabilizing individual trusts that if they order their own life rightly, the world will, in some measure, reflect that order. This is not arrogance but humility, the acknowledgement that the only domain one can truly govern is oneself. Yet that self-governance, multiplied across many individuals, is what sustains civilization. The person who tends their inner garden contributes more to the world than the ideologue who seeks to reorder it by force. Such individuals are not saints, but they are moral anchors. They remind us that the solution to chaos is not found in mass movements or grand revolutions but in the quiet restoration of character. Every generation must rediscover this truth, for the temptation of external blame is perennial. Yet history reveals the same pattern: when individuals take responsibility for their lives, societies heal; when they abdicate it, societies crumble. The stabilizing force, therefore, is not a luxury but a necessity. It is the foundation upon which freedom, justice, and meaning rest. Without it, everything collapses into noise and confusion. To live this way is to carry an invisible torch through darkness. You may not see its light reflected back to you immediately, but others will. You may not change the world, but you will hold it together where you stand. And that is enough. The stabilizing individual is not driven by the need for recognition but by the quiet conviction that order must be maintained, that the world, for all its brokenness, is still worth preserving. In becoming such a person, you do not merely survive the storm, you become the calm within it. You transform from participant in chaos to architect of order, from echo of the world's instability to its moral foundation. And in doing so, you fulfill the highest human duty: to bring coherence where there is confusion, to stand upright when everything else falls, and to remind creation itself that meaning has not yet been extinguished. Embracing the endless path of becoming. To live rightly is not to arrive, but to continue. The solution-oriented life does not end in triumph or completion, but in the quiet, unwavering commitment to the process of becoming. The human being is not a finished product but an unfolding story, an ever-renewing dialogue between what is and what could be. The illusion of arrival, the fantasy that one day all conflict, doubt, and imperfection will disappear, is one of the greatest deceptions of the modern mind. Life does not grant finality, it grants opportunity, the constant chance to become something truer, stronger, and more whole. The individual who accepts this truth ceases to chase perfection and begins instead to participate consciously in the eternal process of renewal. The path of becoming is endless because reality itself is dynamic. Order and chaos are not static opposites but perpetual companions, each giving rise to the other in a ceaseless dance. To live meaningfully within this reality is to accept its fluid nature, to understand that the work of creation and the struggle for order will never be complete. Each time you build something stable, time and entropy begin their work of dismantling it. Each time you grow in virtue, new challenges emerge to test that growth. This is not a flaw in existence but its very essence. Without the demand for continual adaptation, there could be no development, no depth, no life. The meaning of being lies not in preservation but in participation, in the willingness to reforge the self endlessly in the furnace of experience. Many people resist this truth. They long for a moment of rest, a permanent plateau where all striving ceases. They imagine that happiness will arrive when all problems are solved, when the struggle finally ends. But this desire for completion is a disguised form of death. To cease becoming is to cease living. Growth demands tension, meaning demands challenge. The individual who understands this learns to stop seeking escape from difficulty and begins instead to see it as the medium of transformation. The endless path is not a curse but a calling, a divine invitation to engage with the world as a co-creator, to continually refine the form of your being against the rough edges of reality. Perfection is the enemy of becoming because it freezes life into an impossible ideal. The pursuit of flawlessness leads to paralysis, resentment, and despair. It measures the self against an unreachable standard and finds it perpetually wanting. But the purpose of existence is not to be perfect, it is to move toward perfection, to orient oneself toward the good and strive faithfully, even in imperfection. True virtue lies in the striving, not the completion. Each moment of honest effort, each small act of courage, each decision to confront rather than evade, is an expression of moral beauty. The world does not demand that you be flawless, it demands that you be faithful. It asks not for completion, but for commitment. To walk the path of endless becoming requires humility, because it demands the recognition that you will never know enough, never be enough, never do enough, and yet you must act anyway. Humility, properly understood, is not self-deprecation but accurate awareness. It is the courage to see yourself as incomplete while continuing to move forward with integrity. The humble person does not despair over their limitations, they treat them as the boundaries within which greatness can still emerge. They do not seek to be gods, but to be good, to live in alignment with truth even while knowing they will fall short of it. In this humility lies freedom, because it releases you from the tyranny of impossible ideals and anchors you in the nobility of the possible. Every day on this path requires renewal. Order decays with time, and the moral life must be re-established each morning. The mind drifts toward distraction, the heart toward complacency. Meaning does not sustain itself, it must be consciously rekindled. This is why discipline is holy. Discipline is the daily act of remembrance, the reassertion of purpose against the inertia of chaos. When you choose to act responsibly even when no one watches, when you speak truthfully even when it costs you comfort, you participate in the timeless ritual of renewal. You keep the flame of order alive within yourself, and through that flame you illuminate the path for others. In this continual act of reorientation lies the essence of faith, not belief without doubt, but commitment despite doubt. To embrace becoming is also to embrace change, and change is inseparable from suffering. Each new stage of growth requires the death of what came before. The person you are must be continually sacrificed for the sake of the person you could be. This process is painful, because it requires letting go of familiarity, pride, and control. Yet the pain of transformation is infinitely preferable to the stagnation of decay. The suffering of becoming refines, the suffering of avoidance corrupts. The individual who chooses growth, despite the cost, learns that pain is not merely to be endured but to be integrated, a signal that something valuable is being reshaped within. The willingness to change, even when it hurts, is the signature of the soul aligned with truth. In this perpetual movement toward order, one discovers a paradoxical peace. It is not the peace of stillness, but the peace of engagement, the calm of knowing that struggle itself is meaningful. When you cease to demand certainty and instead align yourself with the process of becoming, life no longer feels like a series of obstacles but like a sequence of lessons. Every failure becomes instruction, every loss an invitation to refine your aim. You begin to see that the world is not against you, it is shaping you. Each challenge you encounter is an opportunity to clarify who you are